Hello, YouTube, Mandibil here. Welcome to my deconstruction of Keith Frankish's lecture series on illusionism. And let us step right into it again. And we are heading off at the 1 hour and 13-minute mark, so to say, or thereabout, in lecture 3, the case for illusionism. And more particularly, what he calls the meta problem.
The thought is that there's good reason to think that we can explain our beliefs about phenomenal consciousness without supposing that it exists. And here I want to introduce what Chalmers calls the meta problem. The meta problem is the problem of explaining our intuitions about phenomenal consciousness. So Chalmers thinks there's a problem of phenomenal consciousness, the hard problem. Phenomenal consciousness exists, and we want to try to explain it, and that's a hard problem. That constitutes a hard problem. But there's another problem here, the meta problem, the problem of why we think that there's a hard problem, why we think that consciousness is hard to explain, why we have the intuitions about consciousness being non-physical and so on. So intuitions about all the problems that consciousness poses, about how to explain it, how it's related to the physical world, all the things we've talked about and more. More broadly, we might see the meta problem as the problem of explaining all the heterophenomenological data, all our reports about our own experience, about our inner worlds of experience.
Why is he so hung up on these reports? Reports are just sounds that he interprets in a certain way, which he has been trained to interpret in that particular. A word is another term for sound. It's a particular sound, right? It's not another word for sound. That would be incorrect, right? But it's a particular term for a particular sound, right? When you make this particular sound, it's called a word because I have been trained to understand that sound as a particular interpretation or a particular reference to some kind of experience, right? So words are just sounds created to reference certain experiences that you can then communicate to somebody else. But, making a sound is not the same as the reference, right? If I'm saying elephant, that's just a sound, right? It's not the elephant. So if I'm reporting whatever X, it doesn't mean necessarily I'm experiencing X. I could be lying. I could be deranged. I could be malfunctioning. I could be whatever, a politician, right? A fucking liar. How do you know it's a politician? Or how do you know a politician lies? Well, you see the lips moving, right? So it's unbelievably incoherent, his way of both presenting these kinds of so-called problems in this incoherent manner that illuminates me just how ignorant he is of what it really takes to do this kind of philosophy, right? And, judgments and reports about experience. Who gives a crap about reports? I don't want to sit around waiting for somebody to report to me whether or not it's a banana, right? I want to fucking find out if I land on some deserted island. I'm just disabled because there's no reports, right? Should I report to myself or what? I have my experience. I have my qualia. How do I know if this banana or fruit is good for me or bad for me, right? Well, I have to use my tastes or my vision or my, touch it and look at it and smell it and, whatever to figure out, is it something, am I going to die when I eat this, right? But I could have a belief of this phenomenal consciousness about this fruit. Who gives a flying fuck, man, if you want to survive on a deserted island? Well, then you could say, yeah, but that's a very specific little situation you might end up in. Well, in some sense, we are all of the time living on a deserted island, metaphorically, right? We are alone with our experiences. Just because there's somebody else over there who might be the same kind of being as I am, who can make certain sounds I interpret as reporting, doesn't mean that all of a sudden my experiences are invalid. Because what are those reports based on? Their experiences, man, right? Oh my God. I mean, this guy is so fucking annoyingly stupid, man. I can't believe it, man. A fucking professor of philosophy, man. Oh my fucking God. What an idiot, man.
Including the very belief that phenomenal consciousness exists, that we do have this private inner world. Now, the crucial point here is that the meta problem doesn't seem to be itself a hard problem, because we can characterize the things that need explaining here in functional terms. We need to explain the production of certain cognitive states or linguistic reports. And
do you need to explain a linguistic report? What the hell are you talking about? What are you talking about? I'm not awaiting some kind of report when I go down to the grocery store to buy my fucking pickles, right? Are you awaiting some kind of report that tells you whether or not it's a jar of pickles or what? Now, how does it work, this thing you're doing here, right? Well, what are you trying to do? Are you just out to try to explain away qualia, right? Is that all it's about, right? You call it illusionism, but you can't base your philosophy of something that isn't there, or isn't important, or is just some confusing Cartesian theater. My philosophy is about that which is ridiculous. What? You can't define yourself from what you're not, right? Or what you consider something that is confusing or invalid or something like. Yes, my philosophy is based on rejecting that which is invalid. What kind of fucking philosophy is that, right? Illusionism? Get the fuck out of here, man, right? And then he says the meta problem, but then he talks about heterophenomenological data. What the hell are those, man? Show me those data, goddammit, right? Involves explaining functions, the production of cognitive states or linguistic reports. Would you stay with one thing at a time? Please explain this meta problem. The problem of explaining our, I'm not keen on that term, our. Talk about yourself. Don't tell me what I'm having intuitions about, right? About phenomenal consciousness. And it's all, I'm completely lost in words now, right? I'm lost in terms, and he keeps throwing new words at me. Oh, we have to deal with this word also. Now we have sort of the meta problem. Okay, oh man, it keeps just going. He's just, shoving this shit at your face, right? I have no overview of what he's doing. I have no sense of strictness or conciseness or precision or any kind of overview of what he's doing. I'll have to, conclude that he's just out to tell me I shouldn't trust my qualia, right? And basically, that's all I have, right? And I find this to be extremely criticizable, right? Telling people they shouldn't trust the colors, the sounds, and so on, right? And but then he'll come back to me. No, it's just how its likeness. It's not the qualia out there, but it's the qualia in there. What? It's like, what are you, what are you refuting? What is it that is illusion? Is it the color, or my idea that it's a color, me thinking about the color that is. What are you? I mean, I'm completely lost in this tsunami of academic, word juggling, right?
There's every reason to think that we can do this in psychological terms and then explain that in neural terms and so on. Explaining reports and judgments and other reactions, these are among the easy problems of consciousness, the problems that can be characterized in functional terms. And it seems likely that the solution to the meta problem will involve positing introspective processes that monitor our experiences and create models of our own perceptual activity and generate beliefs and judgments about them. And I talked about this briefly in the first lecture in describing how the illusionist would account for our sense that we are phenomenally conscious. And so solving the meta problem is really equivalent to what I called the illusion problem, the problem of explaining why we have this sense of being phenomenally conscious and having this inner world of mysterious phenomenal properties, mysterious mental qualities. And that is a reference to the paper in which Chalmers introduced the meta problem. Quite an influential paper. So if you remember, we had this. I introduced this picture in the first lecture. It's we have the first order perceptual processes, which with the red arrow on the left, and then the reactions that they generate with the green arrow. And then instead of phenomenal consciousness being produced, there being real phenomenal fields produced.
I would like to understand what. Okay, let's go with this crazy idea that there's a gray apple out there, right? That he knows. I mean, he's presenting this as if it's something he has access to. Otherwise, he's manipulating me, right? If he says that perception is, he's drawn it sort of halfway inside, outside this brain, right? But I would be very careful and put this perception inside the brain, right? Otherwise, is his perception sort of halfway out of the brain and halfway inside the brain, or what? This is very loose and handheld, just slapping some arrows on, hey, I explain stuff, right? This is lazy, man, right? And this apple, if it's outside his brain, does he know that it's outside his brain? He have to present it as an experience inside his brain. Otherwise, he is everything, right? Everything is his brain. If it has to be inside the brain to be an experience. So how does he have access to this outside world, right? Yes, he might have an experience inside his brain which he, let's say, perceives and understands as something outside, but it's still inside. Otherwise, he couldn't have access to it, right? So it's this inside-outside dichotomy that is the problem. This is where people go wrong, right? They are immediately placing that inside experience as an one-to-one outside experience also, because that's the intuitive understanding of the experience, that it is an outside, right? But yes, there might be an outside. I can't rule that out. I can't prove it either, right? But judging from my experience alone, there is nothing about this experience that necessitates it being an outside, right? It is, at least in my opinion, from the get-go, an inside experience. Axiomatically, it has to be. Otherwise, you are violating the whole idea of this brain and skull and mind and all this, right? You don't need that skull to explain anything in this presentation, right? Just say there are apples and, right? And if you are creating this inside-outside dichotomy, you have to stay with the inside as that which you can reference. But you don't want that. You want to tell people what is out there. You want to tell yourself what is out there. And you are taking that inner experience, that photograph of that potential outside, right? And saying it is the outside, right? That is the fucking problem. That's what you have to identify in order to get to do good metaphysics. And because you don't do that, you are running into the hard problem of consciousness. You don't understand how this apple all of a sudden becomes colors, right? But the problem is you never had the access to that outside. It's all going on in your inside and your interpretations of that inside. So you can never get to you can formulate a hard problem and say it's interesting that it becomes colors, whatever it is out there, right? But then you have to say I can't get to the answer because I don't have access to it. I only have access to whatever it is that when it becomes an experience. And that happens inside my brain. It's no longer an outside, right? If I'm saying there is an outside, that inside can merely, at most, be some kind of representation, axiomatically, right?
Accompanying this perceptual activity.
The question that started me off on this rant, right? But in this perception circle, right? What is it that goes out, the green arrow that goes out to the apple? What is that? What is it? I mean, I can understand the red arrow in its sort of the vibrations that become sound potentially, right? And the light that becomes colors possibly, right? Though light is still a mental representation of whatever it might be going on out there, right? But let's say whatever it is that is represented as light, which then becomes whatever perception and, tastes and so on, right? I can understand there's a one-way street this way, right? But there's nothing that goes out my eyes onto the apple, is there, right? There's nothing traveling the other way. It's a one-way street, isn't it? So what is that other arrow, right? And the other introspective, well, if it's introspective, it's sort of towards the inside. Then if it's introspection, what is that going out? Are you outrospecting there or what? Into the perception, there's something traveling to the perception. I don't understand how this is supposed to be. Because in my opinion, there is only one-way street. Right? And it starts with the perception, which I would call the experience or the qualia, which you then introspect about, right? Some of it goes in a sort of a automatic fashion. You're not deciding to experience elephant. If you experience elephant, it's sort of your mind's automatic autopilot that apparently cognizes elephant, right? What you do about the elephant is sort of that kind of introspection we're talking about, but that's still yet on the deeper and deeper into the sort of introspective direction, right? I have the color, okay, then I cognize elephant, okay, then I think about elephant, I decide what to do because of elephant, and so on, and then I might make an action, but that is not a part of the thinking. That is sort of an inner, down through the cord of the brain at the other end that turns out to be some kind of action at some point, which I can then experience some changes, then elephant running away, whatever, right? But that's not a part of the mind. You could say it, but it doesn't go the other way. It's just a new thing on that conveyor belt that goes through your mind into a potential action, right? So this is completely fucked up also. This understanding of these mind going in circles or whatever, right? No, it's a conveyor belt, right? And that's also why you have a sense of time, because this conveyor belt turns into a kind of memory, right? With time distances, let's say, between events that has happened, right? Okay.
We have mechanisms of introspection, again, which target our own perceptual and reactive states, supplying information about them, the second red arrow, the red arrow on the right, and then produce a whole bunch of reactions. to those, including the phenomenal reports and judgments and so on that are the target of the meta problem. And in his paper, Chalmers surveys a variety of models of how this how these introspective processes might explain our problem intuitions about consciousness. We will look at some of those suggestions in the fifth lecture because they are essentially solutions to the illusion problem. They're actually varieties of illusionist theory. Okay, so we have this approach to explaining.
I'm just dumbfounded. This meta problem, there was the hard problem and there was also a meta problem. I would like you to spend a few minutes on that. I mean, the meta, would you mind? Would you mind? Elaborating on that meta problem. If there's a huge problem somewhere, I would like to understand what the hell it is, right? You can't say, meta problem, and then, throw another bunch of words and a weird drawing at me, right? Stay on target, man, right? Come on.
Our judgments and reports about phenomenal consciousness, okay, by appealing to mechanisms of introspection. So now we can tell a similar sort of debunking story to the one about UFOs. Okay.
I don't like that term phenomenal consciousness, right? What does he mean actually by consciousness? That's still very confusing to me, right? Is the awareness of qualia, right? Because there are also elephants, that's not qualia, is it? That's sort of a concept, I would say, right? Or a cognition. Is that phenomenal? Is it elephants and concepts like that, bicycles and so on, that are phenomenal? But the consciousness is merely an awareness of this. So it's not the consciousness that is phenomenal. It's consciousness is aware of the phenomena. So calling it phenomenal consciousness is as if the phenomenon is going on in the consciousness. No, I would say that would be the same as saying the moon is inside the camera. No, the moon is not inside the camera. The camera is aware of the moon and creating this picture, but the moon is not fucking inside the camera, right? Just like the phenomena is not inside consciousness. So it's sort of a weird way of just lumping words together that sounds, like he knows something. It doesn't seem that way to me, right? And because he has all these terms he needs to juggle around, because, that's what, have to do when you're academic. It's sort of, he's tangled up in so many words and so many weird ideas that he's sort of lost contact with reality, right? Okay, so, let's head on. So now we're talking a phenomenality debunked, phenomenal judgments and reports, phenomenal. Let's see what he says.
Okay, so we start with this bunch of phenomenal judgments and reports, the things that people say about their own experience, about...
No, you can't base your philosophy on what people are telling you, right? I mean, are you fucking crazy, man, right? Philosophy is a kind of thinking, and thinking about your own experiences, not what people tell you. I mean, you don't just accept what a politician tells you just because they're telling it to you, right? Yeah, I'm going to give you what you want. Yeah, I'm going to protect you. Of course they're not. They're liars. And, but might not be liars if somebody's reporting on their elephants or whatever. But a report is not the fucking thing you are talking about. As if you were doing astronomy, looking at photographs of the moon, right? You would have to be the one experiencing whatever it is you are doing, right? There has to be a first person access to what the hell you're talking about. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. You can rely on reporting, man, right? I mean, I'm dumbfounded that he's arguing this way. It's ridiculous, man, right? You can't rely your metaphysical thinking, your philosophy, on reporting of any kind. You have to be able to get there by your own accord, by your own experiences. In fact, metaphysics is a categorization, delineation, description, whatever you want to call it, of your own experiences, right? You have to do it by yourself. You can't rely on reporting of any kind, right? Whenever somebody talking about metaphysics, rely on, yeah, somebody else told me, right? Just say, fuck you, right? Because they don't know what they're doing. Because that telling is not the same as that which they are telling about. And also, how does Keith Frankish, who apparently fucking hate qualia, get those fucking reports without qualia, without using qualia, man, right? Oh, man, it's fucking ridiculous, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man, it's so stupid, man. Moscow, Moscow Center for Consciousness Studies. What the fuck are you doing, man? Hasn't anybody, proofread or proof viewed this shit? Who the hell would finance this shit, man? And put a name to it? It's ridiculous, man. Are there any well-functioning people there in Moscow, right? Are you still fucking communists or what? There are reports from the ministry. The Central Committee has reported that this is the case. The Kremlin has spoken, right?
That it's like something to be them, that they're aware of this, they're acquainted with this inner world of mental qualities, and which seem strange and non-physical and so on, and produce a hard problem. And those reports give us reason, prima facie reason, to believe that phenomena.
There's also weird, what does it mean that something is physical? What does that really entail, right? Is that it's non-physical? But if there's something that is physical, and how do you get to what you mean by physical? Is it handed to you in some kind of transcendental manner where some external whatever is telling you this is the physical out there? And you say, oh my God, I only have colors and sounds and so on, but I'm given this physical thing. How does that work? How do you get to it? But the only access, in my opinion, is the empirical access to that external world. And I think you would say that also as a sort of, materialist scientist, right? You have to view it. You have to look at it. You have to listen to it. You have to touch it, feel it, smell it, and so on, in order to have any idea of physical, right? I can touch my laptop here, right? You touch the camera and screen and so on. But is that physical? That's my touch sense, right? I'm just calling it physical. But there's nothing magical about the term physical that is, elevating my touch sense to anything more magical than touch, right? So what does it entail being physical? Again, in my opinion, it's an appeal to qualia. It's an appeal to qualia. You need to have the qualia in order to have anything you can call physical, right? So physical is another term used for describing your qualia. You can't get around it. I mean, you can't remove what you don't want. You can't extract something from those qualia and say, now I don't need the qualia because I've done this extraction I call physical. That's very strange way of approaching your experiences, right? And then you end up rejecting your experience or your qualia, right? as I don't need it because now I have. Now I got my car, so now I don't need my, vision. That's weird, right?
Phenomenal consciousness is real, and that there is a hard problem. But now we add in these theories, these introspective models, and they explain all the things we're inclined to judge and report about phenomenal consciousness, including the kind of things we're inclined to say to ourselves, to report to ourselves about our inner lives. And so by a parity of reasoning, that explanation undercuts the justification that those reports gave us for believing in phenomenal consciousness itself. And we have no reason to believe in it anymore. So this is the debunking argument for illusionism.
Is this the argument? This weird drawing is your argument? But you're calling it debunking phenomenality. Are you saying that phenomenality is the same as qualia now? Excuse me, I'm just fucking confused about all these terms. What do you mean by phenomenality, right? Is it qualia? Or is it the qualia? Is it the color of the smell of the elephant, or is it elephant? Can you debunk elephant? I suppose not, right? Because you can't debunk brain and eyes and nose, apparently, right? So why should you be able to debunk elephant? So I don't think it's the cognitions, right? So it must be the colors and the sounds and so on that is the phenomenality he's debunking. But he's using a fucking screen with red and green colors and so on in order to convey it. I mean, how do you square this fucking circle, man, right? Yeah, just look at the colors, but they're not important. But then you can't argue, right? Then you can report your philosophy to me. It might point that these colors and sounds are very important, man, for communication and so on, right? Just like you're spending 6 hours or whatever here using qualia to get your point across, which is don't trust the qualia. It takes high level of academia to be this fucking crazy, man, right?
Now, of course, all that assumes that we can give a complete explanation of our phenomenal intuitions and reports in terms of introspective processes. But that's not an unreasonable hypothesis, given as I said, that explaining these things is a matter of explaining functions. So suppose it's true. Suppose we can do that. Then,
just so is he having two? It seems like there are two pictures in there. Or is it mine? No, it's a part of YouTube. So he had two windows. He's recording the same. If you look at that corner, the upper left corner, there's two. Weird. Well, never mind. It seems to work fine.
Phenomenal realism has been debunked, right? Well,
it has been debunked? Oh, how has it been debunked? I don't have a strong sense that this is a good argument, right? First of all, as I said, you are using qualia in order to convey your message here, right? And that message is phenomenal consciousness. I mean, is your presentation here, is that not phenomenal? If not, what the hell is it then, right? If it's not qualia and it's not a concept, what is it? And if you're saying, yeah, but it's a phenomenal lecture I'm doing here, right? Well, then you're using a phenomenal lecture to argue against the phenomenality. You're using phenomenality to debunk phenomenality. What's the matter with you, man, right? Can't you see a problem? Oh man, why don't you take a few years off and go out in the real world? Take a standard job like the rest of us, right? Work from 9 to 5, or even better, work a night shift or something, producing stuff, right? And learn about phenomenality rather than sitting there in fucking, Southern Europe, eating pickles and making weird kinds of lectures, right? Go out in reality and use your illusion, right? And see how much this phenomenality actually works and is beneficial, right? Don't tell me the color of the pickles is not important, right? If your pickles are suddenly blue, you wouldn't say, hey, that's just an illusion, right? You wouldn't fucking eat it, right? Because you expect the qualia to be an evidence of something being wrong with the pickles, right? Fuck off with this stupid shit, man, right?
The realist isn't quite out yet. The realist can come back. And they can point out quite rightly that the debunking argument doesn't prove that phenomenal consciousness doesn't exist. It just proves at most that we're not justified in believing that it exists, and that it would be a large coincidence if it did.
What? What?
And then the realist will insist that it does exist. That phenomenal consciousness does exist. When we're in pain, it's not just that certain processes are happening in our brains and certain psychological reactions are being generated. It's that we really are feeling pain in the phenomenal sense. We're really acquainted with a mental quality of pain.
I mean, what the hell is going on here? I don't get it, man. What is the fucking... what is he debunking? The debunking argument does not prove that phenomenal consciousness does not exist. No, but then we have to delineate what we mean by existence. That is in itself a very bad kind of argument there, right? Phenomenal is not existing. Right? That is not... Yeah, you could maybe, but he hasn't clarified what he means by existing, right? But what is he debunking? If it does not prove... debunking does not prove that phenomenal consciousness exists, that means that it can't prove that exists. So therefore, it's a backward way of saying I can't use an argument to prove that it exists. So I have to say I cannot prove that, or but he cannot disprove its existence because there is something going on, right? You can't say that there aren't qualia. They are there, but they are just illusions, right? They're just some weird kind of spin-off that we don't need, actually, right? But then he says only that we are not justified in believing that it exists. What? I'm not justifying believing that I'm experiencing, the red logo of YouTube. No, but then you have to delineate what you mean by exist. You haven't done that. You have it's called a ontology. But what do you mean by existence? What is that? How do you get to existence? You can't say, fuck the qualia, but I'm getting to an existence over here. And I'm looking at that existence, or I'm accessing that existence, and there are not colors over there. But how do you get to that existence then, right? How do you get there? You can't just claim something, right? And that's again this we. Speak for yourself, right? Don't tell me what I'm justified in. And then, or at least that it would be a coincidence if it did. So it would be a coincidence if phenomenal consciousness exists. How the fuck does this guy get around in the world, right? How does he get around in his experience? It must be annoying living in all these qualia at the same time as he has to keep saying to himself, it's an illusion, it's an illusion, it's an illusion. What kind of life is this guy living, right? The realist will reply, it does exist all the same. We do feel phenomenal pain. Oh my God, I'm sick and tired of this shit, man. Oh, man, God. Let's get on with it.
And that we're more sure of that, of the reality of phenomenal pain, than we are of than we could be of the soundness of the debunking argument. So we really do feel phenomenal pain, even though we would believe that we did,
even though we would still believe that we did even if we didn't. Are you? Is this a fucking joke or what, man? Even though we would still believe that we did even if we didn't? He's running around in circles. Does he even understand what the hell he's saying, man? I mean, I'm lost now completely, man. I mean, these sentences here, I mean, it's ridiculous. The debunking does not prove that phenomenal consciousness does not exist. Okay, so what have you actually debunked then, right? Only that we are not justified in believing that it exists. Well, what is it? Phenomenal consciousness, we are not justified in believing that it exists. No, but I don't want to believe something, right? What does it mean that it's justified? How do I justify things? Using qualia, what? No. Well, what then? What do I do then, right? Or at least that it would be a coincidence if it did. It's a coincidence of existence. Coincidence. I don't like the word coincidence in my metaphysics. I mean, to be quite frank, man, to be quite Frankish, right? I don't like coincidence as a part. It would be. Come on, man. Yeah, it's just a coincidence. The realist will reply. Okay, what is the realist? Are you a realist? I thought you were an illusionist. Will reply, yeah, that's what they do, those realists. All of them, they would say, they would attack you, they would come after you, right? Will reply, it does exist all the same. What? But the realist is saying that something exists that is a coincidence. Is that I don't, these sentences don't, they don't work together, man, right? It's simply too fluffy what you're doing here. But we do feel phenomenal pain. Yeah, but pain is also a kind of experience, at least. It's not one of the five senses. Maybe you could say it's a kind of the feeling sense. We could discuss that, what we mean by it, right? But we certainly need to, when I feel a pain, there's, I change my behavior compared to how I might have planned it. If I'm going to run from A to B and halfway I break my leg, I'm not going to keep running, right? Even though I had planned to run from A to B. And the pain was what helps me get to the point that there's something wrong there, right? So I'm using the phenomenal pain. Who gives a flying fuck if it's an illusion or what, right? Whatever that entails. I'm using my illusion, right? Even though we would still believe that this instance is fucking taking the bill, right? What is it referring to, or what is it saying? Even though we would still believe that we did, even if we didn't. Is that the pain? You would still believe the pain that still believe that we did have the pain, even if we didn't. But if we didn't have the pain, we didn't have the pain. If we have the pain, we have the pain. That's what you know, right? Is it a phantom pain or something like that? How would you know, Rand? You have the pain, that's what you have. What you do with it is up to you, right? I mean, have I done, a couple of hours or more of deconstruction to get to bullshit like this? Is that what you're going to say is some kind of debunking argument against qualia or what? I'm so fucking annoyingly disappointed about this shit.
And if we didn't. So what are the options for the realist here? How can the realist defend this view? Well, again, it's a matter of finding a place for phenomenal consciousness in the picture we're developing of the explanation of our phenomenal judgments. So we have this picture now where our phenomenal judgments and reports and other reactions are all fully explained by introspective processes in the brain. But the realist...
Isn't this the same drawing, just with another headline now? It doesn't. If you have to show a drawing, schematics, whatever, take it away and then bring it back later, and take it away and maybe bring it back for a third time and so on. It seems like you are just... I mean, I would like to have a PowerPoint show where you show a drawing and explain what is going on there, and then we don't need that anymore because we understand what you're talking about, right? So now you said, let me bring it back and talk about it with another headline now, right? It's like, it seems like it's chaotic. It seems like he doesn't actually know what the hell he's doing. He has no overview of this. He's just trying his best to push himself through cherry picking and just, sort of hand waving and using whatever sort of, this sounds like it could be whatever. Yeah, it's probably, debunked, right? This is sort of the level of rigidity I sense, which is sort of more a description of a lack of it, right? I have no patience with this. I mean, it's so bad. It's so incoherent, and I get a very strong sense that this has not been thought through, right? This has not been thought through at all. It leaves more questions than it answers, right? It's trying to answer a couple of questions, one or two questions, and then 50 new, 100 new questions appear, right? He just, passes over like, and all these terms used, right? And some of them seem to be describing the same thing, like phenomenal consciousness. Well, is that qualia? Again, why do you need to have all these words, right? It's a clear indication to me that you are wrapped up in a lot of academic bullshit that you can't find your way out of, right? And at the ground floor, there is a contradiction or a paradox built in to your understanding of this experience, right? You're jumping into something without even realizing you're jumping into some kind of axiom, an implicit axiom, without understanding you're doing that. And then you have cornered yourself into your abstractions and you can't get out of it, right? You're trying to use these abstractions to get to a way to debunk qualia, but not realizing in order for you to have those abstractions, you needed to have qualia, right? So you have locked yourself in something you can't get out of now, right? And you will never get out of it unless you realize this foundational contradiction, right? But you will never be able to get there because you think you have left it behind as if it's settled, right? So your mind is not going to go there because this is how it is. I don't even need to think about it, right? And this is sort of the naive realism approach to things, right? that screws everything up here, right? And that's why it's so complicated and convoluted and weird, right? Because there's a foundational problem you haven't addressed.
Liz still wants to have consciousness somewhere in the picture. So where could it be? Well, one option would be to say that phenomenal consciousness isn't something independent of the mechanisms mentioned in our explanation of the reports and judgments. That it's not true that the explanation we gave was completely independent of phenomenal consciousness, because the processes we mentioned in that explanation, some of the states we mentioned in that explanation were just conscious states. They were the same thing. We just didn't give them that name. So we could say, we could identify consciousness with some of the states mentioned in the explanation of our judgments. Now, this, of course, will be a physicalist form of realism. We'd be saying that the consciousness gets into the picture by being the same thing as some of the physical states that produce our judgments about it. So we might identify phenomenal consciousness with the perceptual states that are monitored by introspection. Or perhaps we might identify it with the introspective states that are doing the monitoring. In both cases, we'd be identifying phenomenal consciousness with some of the states mentioned in the explanation of our phenomenal reports and judgments, and therefore the explanation of those reports and judgments would no longer be independent of phenomenal consciousness, and so the debunking argument wouldn't go through. Now, my worry about this is the same as the one I mentioned earlier when discussing Diet Qualia. In what sense would this be a form of phenomenal realism? Why would these states, these perceptual or introspective states, count as possessing anything more than zero qualia? We can pin the label phenomenally conscious onto these states, but
I sort of halfway mentally jumped up the wagon now, right? Several times I had the feeling he presents a new set of argument statements on a slide and a picture or something like that, and I sort of, no, that doesn't work for me. And okay, I'm awaiting the next one, and then I'm listening, and the next one is sort of, it doesn't work for me. So it's like, okay, this is slide number 50 or something, and it's the same thing. I don't understand where it's going, right? So it's annoying way. It's like the analogy I had with going on a vacation for 1 month with somebody without knowing where the hell you're going, right? It's just not a good way of doing a vacation without any planning or any idea. You're just going left, right, left, up, down, and backing up a bit and saying, no, we have to, whatever. It's like, well, is this a vacation? A vacation is very much also about understanding and having plans and ideas about what you want to go and what you expect there to be there and so on, right? So having an overview of what you're doing is necessary to have a good understanding. And maybe that's a telling thing. There is no overview here, right? He just keeps throwing slides at you, right? Yeah, I'm not saying there isn't at least some amount of philosophy and some amount of argumentation. Of course there is, but it's just so bloated and extremely convoluted and incoherent and all over the place with terms and so on, right? And lazy descriptions of, these arrows, these just, picked out of some, what's it called? Transparent GIFs in his his PowerPoint show, right? There's red and green arrows. Yeah, whatever, right? It's good enough for me, right? This has to be very strict, right? It seems he's very concerned with particular arguments and how you can throw around words to argue, but presentations of what is going on in phenomenal consciousness and what that's just, slapping on some arrows and then that's explained, right? It just seems the quality is not even throughout, right? It's like there has to be, because the little people, they need something to look at, right? Without actually realizing looking is a kind of qualia, right?
What is that adding to the picture that the illusionist describes? The illusionist says that these are the processes that have involved in...
Okay, so a realist is somebody thinking that phenomenal whatever is actually existing, is an existence. But no. No, I'm. What is the difference between an illusionist and a realist? A realist say that the qualia is a part of reality, while the illusionist say that qualia is not a part of reality. It's just a weird show. What's the difference? Why would I need to differentiate actually? Even if it's a weird show, why? I mean, he is self-refuting. He's self-contradictory in the way he is using qualia here to argue for his statement or his philosophy about qualia, what I call it, right, is an illusion. So he's more a realist in this sense than an illusionist, right? Because he is using these illusions to argue that it's an illusion, right? So he's using these illusions as he's taking them seriously. That's which apparently what a realist is in his. I can't square this. It doesn't make sense to me, right? I really don't like this shit.
In generating our phenomenal reports and judgments. The realist agrees with that and wants to call some of those states phenomenally conscious. But what is that adding to the picture apart from the name? What extra feature of these states is being referred to other than the features that are mentioned in the illusionist account? Which, of course, captures all the psychological and behavioral reactions. And taking this line would really, I think, be changing the meaning of the term phenomenal consciousness. We introduced the notion of phenomenal consciousness was introduced from a first-person perspective. It was supposed to be a name for what experience is like, subjectively. And how we're going to use it for whatever it is, whatever processes in the brain cause us to have these beliefs about phenomenal consciousness, then we seem to have changed the meaning quite radically. I mean, in fact, one could hold on to belief in anything in the face of a debunking argument by taking that sort of line. I suppose. Well, look, take UFO beliefs. Suppose you're a UFO believer and you have all these...
I think we will keep the UFOs until next time, right? So I just, I shouldn't believe in that picture over there, but this picture here, that's I should believe that, and I can use that to reject the other picture. It's like those are qualia, colors that are different, so I can identify certain geometric stuff that I could objectify or cognize, right? Why would that be relevant? Why would that be correct rather than this one over here? What's wrong with that one compared to that one? They're all just qualia, right? So you're taking something for granted, but it doesn't work, this shit, right? Okay, please share, like, and subscribe, and leave a comment. Join the Discord, link below, and otherwise, see you in the next one.